If you plow all your money into filling up your patent attorney's corporate jet, you're not going to have any money to get there. There's a lot of times that patents hurt a startup. Absolutely, without question, malpractice on the part of the attorney. They're like, nah, I don't think this patent is worth $600. As a condition for us to invest, we told them you have to abandon that patent before it ever sees the light of day. As an angel investor, do not ever presume to know what the answer is. What I want to hear? I want to hear thoughtful, reasonable business decision. That's all I want to hear. There is never a good strategy that uses a provisional patent application. If something's missing in the business plan, the patents aren't going to solve that problem. What makes a patent valuable? It's just like in real estate. It's three things: revenue, revenue, revenue.
Welcome to The Diligent Observer, the first podcast exclusively focused on helping angel investors make better bets. I'm your host, Andrew, and every week we explore what works, what doesn't, and why through conversations with experienced startup investors and operators.
My guest today is Russ Krajec, founder of BlueIron IP and author of Investing in Patents. As a former patent attorney who's written over 1,000 patents, Russ brings an honest perspective on when patents actually create value for startups. In this episode, he challenges conventional wisdom about provisional patents, reveals why patent value typically takes 10 to 15 years to materialize, and explains why angel investors should focus first on business fundamentals rather than on IP protection. I hope you enjoy learning from Russ as much as I did.
Russ, thank you for being with me today.
Good to be here. Looking forward to it.
Okay, so Russ, we are here to talk today about a topic that to me feels like one that most angel investors, if we are honest with ourselves, don't really know what to do with, and that is patents. It's either really nice to have, or it's a distraction, or it's an amazing part of the thesis. Like, there's so many varying views on the power and the importance of patents for startups, especially very early on at the pre-seed, seed stage. You have dedicated your entire career to this sector, to this category. You have produced, I think I saw over 1,000 patents. Like, you have personally written over 1,000 patents. Is that right?
I don't know. It's up there. A lot of them don't have my name on them as the drafting attorney, but yeah, I've been doing this for a little while.
Okay, so the point is, you know something about patents. Here's where I want to start, Russ. Explain to me what a patent is at the fundamental level so that we're clear on what that actually means. Should startups think about patents? Should we worry about patents at all? And if yes, at what point? If no, why not?
Patents we all kind of have this thing in our mind of what patents are, because Thomas Edison got a patent on the filament to a light bulb. He didn't get a patent on the light bulb. He got a patent on the filament to the light bulb. And it was something that kept other people from using that same filament, and he was able to sell more light bulbs because of that. Patents are, this thing that the government grants you that gives you this right. And some people mistakenly think about it as a monopoly. It is not a monopoly. It is the exact opposite of a monopoly. It is the right to keep others from doing your thing. So Thomas Edison had the right to keep others from using his filament. Now, they could use a different filament. They can come up with a different way of making a filament or a different material for the filament. They can sell light bulbs all day long. Just because you have a patent on one specific filament, it doesn't mean anything unless it is the absolute best way to do something. If you got a patent on the thing that is the best way to do something, not just another way, 1 out of 10 different ways to do something, then the patent will be meaningful. Patents have been in the US Constitution before the freedom of speech, okay, before the right to bear arms and all that kind of thing. It's way down deep as a core element that promotes the progress of science and technology, because we can get a patent that excludes other people from copying our idea, we can get that idea to market, presumably have a competitive advantage. But at the same time, we have to tell other people how we're doing that. So we're going to exchange a trade secret, and we're going to get back this right to exclude. And trade secrets are the most important thing. That is your competitive advantage. And there's a lot of times that patents hurt a startup. They hurt a startup when I have a patent on a method to manufacture my little filament. And that method is performed inside a factory that's locked. Nobody else can see it. And consequently, if my filament competitor down the street is doing the exact same thing, I'll never have access to their factory, and I'll never be able to tell, oh, you're using the same feeds and speeds and temperatures and pressures that I'm using. Therefore, you infringe, and we have to come to some license agreement. And so what often happens in the startup space is that you come up with some idea, you rush to a patent attorney who's more than happy to take your money, and they're legally obligated to do that. We could talk about that a little bit too, the ethics. They document this trade secret, they write you a patent, and you go forth. And, great, right? That works for some technologies really, really well. Consumer products that are going to be on the store shelf at Walmart, absolutely, you want a patent on it, right? Because it works in a certain way, and it's easy to define. Patents on some AI blockchain nonsense that happens in the cloud somewhere, I can never tell that a competitor is doing that, right? The practicality of enforcement means that patent tends to not have value. I was on a due diligence team for an angel group, and we looked at a company that had a cybersecurity offering. They had this thing that they put in your desktop, and then when these certain events happened, they triggered this one thing, and they caught the person who's infiltrating your computer. And the guy went to an angel group, and some angel investor sat in the back row and said, wow, that's really smart. Do you have a patent on that? And the guy said, nah, I don't think. Oh, I think you ought to have a patent on that. And so he goes and gets a patent application on it. And I asked to look at that as part of the due diligence. And it actually explained exactly, this is exactly what we're doing inside your computer. This is exactly how we implement it. And so the bad guy who's trying to get into your computer, he's got a roadmap for knowing if if your stuff is in there looking for him. And it completely eviscerated the value of that company. As a condition for us to invest, we told them you have to abandon that patent before it gets published and before it ever sees the light of day. And these kind of mistakes happen all the time, right? Especially in the startup space. The other mistake I see people make is getting a patent on the grand idea. Wouldn't it be cool if I had this big system that had all these components that addressed a customer need? So they lay out the entire architecture of how they're going to solve this problem. And these are kind of the grand idea patents. First, there's two problems with it. One, a practical problem is we're not in the market yet. We don't know what customers really want, what they like, or anything, right? We have no data, no feedback. And it's arrogant to think that I can write down the exact solution in totality at the beginning because I have no feedback. And everybody knows that, no business plan ever survives contact with a customer. You're learning as you go, right? The best example of that is this thing here, the iPhone. The iPhone was the first cell phone that did not have a red button and a green button. Remember back, they all had the red button for hanging up and the green button for answering the call. And iPhone was the first one that said, I'm going to do a touch screen interface. And therefore, what am I going to do with the red button and green button? And so they had to develop something that worked in the touchscreen environment that substituted for that. And what they did was this thing called slide to unlock. Slide to unlock was the way you answer a phone. Okay. It was not any big, super sexy, 100 PhDs laboring It was the simplest answer to the question. And they were going down a road that nobody had been before. And so, because they had the problem that nobody had seen before, they were able to capture and define this is the best way to answer this, solve the solution. The proof is in the pudding. When Samsung sued Apple countersued. Apple asserted their slide to unlock patent against Google, well, Samsung, right, the Android platform, as kind of the key patent that defined that product. It was not a touchscreen device that had all these icons and all these tiles and all these apps and, what the apps and the extendability and all that, that's what made a smartphone good or smart or made it a platform. Slide to unlock defined the device. And really, as patent owners or as investors, we don't need a patent on the grand idea of touchscreen phone and tiles and icons and all that nonsense. We just need a patent on slide to unlock, and we can define the whole marketplace.
Russ, I love something you said in there, and I want to double click on it. The example you gave of some angel in the back saying, do we have this patented? I feel like there is this thing in the angel ecosystem. It's just a very simple framework, right? We all love frameworks because they help us think more quickly and make snap judgments. I think there is this framework in many investors' minds, whether we're honest or not. Patent good, no patent bad. Patent defensible, no patent not defensible. Help me evolve this framework.
So, I mean, there's some truth to that, if I have a company that has a patent, it sounds like somebody thought through the process of that. Maybe I have something that'll build a moat around us. Maybe I'll have something I can keep people from competing with me. And what do we want as angel investors or as entrepreneurs? We want to keep the competition out as much as we can to highlight our competitive advantage. If Apple could come in and copy exactly what you're doing and roll it out, you're hosed because you can't fight those guys. But if you have something that keeps them away and gives you a competitive advantage, you want it. It's the devil's in the details, though. In a 5-minute pitch, you go up there, oh yeah, we have 3 patents. The investor in the back goes, oh yeah, that's great. That's not real due diligence. It's interesting. One thing I try to get entrepreneurs to do is to not answer the question of, oh, do you have a patent on that? What I want to hear from them is, here's my IP strategy. This is the way I'm thinking about it. This is kind of the way I'm progressing. As an angel investor, do not ever presume to know what the answer is, right? We're not hiring this guy, this girl, to steward our grandchildren's inheritance through their company and then tell them, oh, well, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. We're hiring them because they are capable, competent, they make good business decisions, and they're going to be good stewards of our capital. And so when we as angel investors presume that they should, oh, you should advertise on Facebook, or you should do this, or you should do that, we're usurping that. And we're creating an environment where we're hemming that person in and not letting them run with their talents, right? What we want to hear is, here's my strategy for that. Here's how I see these elements. Here's what's important to me. Here's how I think about it. And if they have a well-articulated strategy, whether it's getting patents or not getting patents or whatever, then I want to hear it. But anybody who presumes to say, you should have a patent. Oh, do you have patents on there? Don't ask that. Say, what's your IP strategy?
So let's say that that's the question that's been asked. So let's say that someone's taking your advice and they evolve their question. Instead of asking, do you have patents? I'm now asking, can you tell me more about your IP strategy? What are you hoping to hear? How do you evaluate that response?
You evaluate it 2 ways, right? One way you think, well, did they get the answer that I want them to have? Right? And if they say, oh yeah, we're filing like hundreds of patents or whatever, as a patent attorney, I think, wow, that's cool. But what I really want to hear is, are they making reasonable decisions? What's their thought process? How are they approaching this? What input are they taking in, and what decision, are they making a rational and thoughtful decision? We as angel investors are not going to be sitting there all day long telling them that they should be using 20-pound bond paper in their printer instead of 14-pound. We're just not. We need to let them make good decisions and be comfortable with them as stewarding our capital. And it's really easy for angel investors to put a gear in that wrench or put a wrench in that gear and mess up that thought process. What I want to hear? I want to hear thoughtful, reasonable business decision or an argument. That's all I want to hear.
I wonder if you could give some examples, like bring this from kind of theory to practical, real world, early stage company, young founder. Maybe they've raised 500K. Any examples like that in your recent portfolio you can talk about?
What I usually get is I'm on a screening committee for a couple angel groups, and what I usually get is answers that I don't like. And so, for example, somebody says, "Oh, we filed 4 provisional patents." And so I ask them, "Well, what's your strategy behind that? Why did you do that?" I know that provisional patent applications are always wrong. There is never a good strategy that uses a provisional patent application. The whole point of a provisional is to delay getting your patent, right? And so if you delay getting your patent, you delay getting the benefits of it, you delay the ability to license it, you delay the ability to raise money against it, you delay the ability to get acquired, you delay everything. And so either that asset was a good asset and you think it's going to be valuable, and so you're going to get it as fast as you can, put the money into it and do it right, or don't do it at all. Like kind of one or the other, and trying to walk the line between there's really no gray area. But anyway, somebody says they have a provisional patent. I just want to know, what's your patent strategy? And based on the detail that they give, based on kind of they explain their thought process and their decision making, you kind of come up with an opinion as an angel investor of whether they're going to be able to pick between the 14-pound and 20-pound bond paper too, right? This is just an example of, will they hire the right people? Will they find the right vendors? Are they going after the right product? The input that they get from their customer, are they digesting it well and making good decisions based on that? The patent strategy is just one example of how their thought process is.
So I want to talk more about this provisional patent hatred that you have. And I love this because anytime someone gives an absolute response, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Explain more about the difference between a provisional patent and a non-provisional patent, and just, double click on what you said earlier for me.
So provisional patent applications came about in 1995 in the US when the law changed. And it was perceived that, well, let me back up one more time. There's this gigantic international treaty that I think every country in the world, like 190 countries, are party to. It's called the Paris Convention, and it deals only with patents. And what it says is that if you file a patent in your home country and you want to file a patent in my country, you can do so within a year. So I can file if I lived in France, I could file in France. A year later, I could come to the US and I could file in the US. And it's reciprocal. Every country in the world is part of it, even Taiwan. Like Taiwan's an exception to the Patent Cooperation Treaty, but everybody does this. And there's this perception back in the early 90s that foreign companies could file in their home country and delay a year and then file in the US, and then their patent timeline shifts a year. So back then, patents had a 17-year lifespan. And there were some strategies where you want to delay that forever. And then the patent will issue and it pops up out of nowhere because we didn't have this publication thing. And you'd play gotcha with your competitors. If I could delay, and then my patent pops up, now it's, we've got all this infringement. We can go after people and license it. And Jerome Lemelson with the barcode scanners in the 80s and 90s had this to a T. And he made hundreds of millions of dollars licensing barcodes. So anyway, provisional patents were a way to delay that for the US applicants to get that same advantage of a 1-year delay. What has happened is that patent attorneys have used this as a club to beat up their clients. And the scam that patent attorneys run is, hey, I'll file a provisional for you and $1,500, right? And no money. Like, oh, you think about an invention, let's file this cheap provisional. And then a year later, I have a completely arbitrary and unrelated time, but this 1-year date. Oh, you're going to lose all your patent rights if you don't file. Now I can charge for a complete patent application. And this notion of doing a thin patent versus a thick patent is absolutely, without question, malpractice on the part of the attorney. They are not getting the customer's need. There's a lot of scamming that goes around this, but a patent application is a patent application. It has to have the same information in it. And whether I file it as a provisional or a non-provisional, I check the box on the filing form, provisional or non-provisional, but it has to have the same information. So the patent attorney has to do the same amount of work for a provisional or for any patent application. The only thing is the provisional costs you more, right? Because I got to file a provisional, and then I have to go back and file the same thing that I could have filed the first time. But the thing from the angel investor standpoint is that this inventor went to the patent office with this patent application and knowingly, intentionally, and deliberately checked the box provisional versus non-provisional. And the only difference is the cost, which is about $600 between a cost for a provisional and cost for non-provisional, plus or minus, right? Whatever, but $600. So what that inventor is telling you, the angel investor, is that, hey, I went to the patent office and I looked at spending $600 to get this patent or spending less than, for $600, I could get this patent faster. I can have it available for licensing. I can loan against it. I can get acquired faster. All this, better things happen. If I had this patent, they're like, nah, I don't think this patent is worth $600. And so every time you hear somebody say, I did a provisional, it means the price difference, the value of having a patent and having a patent quickly was not worth the $600. Now, a lot of people say, well, I do provisionals so that I could delay the cost of the patent. There are ways that you can delay the cost of the patent. Provisional's one way, but at the end of the day, if the patent's going to have value, don't you want to have it sooner rather than later? The other question is, if you think it's so expensive, why are you investing in it? If it's too expensive, don't do it, right? You capitalize on one of your go-to-market strategy, capitalize on your customer list, capitalize on your marketing, capitalize on your supply chain and manufacturing, capitalize on your distribution. If you don't think the patent's worth it, don't do it. Put that capital that takes forever to actually mature into actual dollars because it's a sunk cost that takes forever to recoup. Put it in something meaningful. Wouldn't you be better off like dumping it into advertising or whatever to grow the customer base, grow the revenue stream faster, and then just keep ahead of the competitors that way? Do you have to do a patent? Those are a few ideas for what I don't like about the provisional patent applications.
I'll direct our listeners to your book, which I'd love for you to
Mhm.
tell us about for more. I'm sure you go into much more detail on provisional patents in that book. Tell us a little bit about your book, and then I'll ask another question.
I wrote this book, Investing in Patents. It was kind of the handbook for, as well as investing in patents, everything startup investors need to know about patents. And so it's really designed for an angel investor to, what is this asset? How do I deal with it? What are best practices around it? It was a few years ago. We, BlueIron, my company, have been doing IP-backed lending. We've been doing this for about 10 years or so, where we look at patents and we loan against those. And so, our business is about trying to figure out, do these patents have value? And just to cut you off on your next question was, what makes a patent valuable? It's just like in real estate. It's three things: revenue, revenue, revenue. If you got revenue and the patents protect that, guard that revenue or protect it, you got a valuable patent. If you don't have revenue, it has potential value, but not realized value. Wouldn't it be cool if a billion people were using my patented cell phone app? Yes, it would be, but they're not. And so most startup entrepreneurs and most angel investors look at patents and try to figure them out in terms of valuation, and they're thinking about them in terms of potential value and not realized value. The way I look at it for startup companies is that patents are they're valuable when they capture the reason why somebody bought your product. Not just, oh, it's got this patented feature over here, but I bought it for some other reason. The patent's irrelevant. I really want to capture the reason why somebody bought that product. If I can, and I have a patent around that, now I have a defensible marketplace, right, or a defensible investment.
So in the Apple example, that would be kind of this slide to unlock feature representing the touchscreen functionality, which was totally different from what everyone else was doing.
Right. And it's more than just the touchscreen. It's kind of the vibe of that device. It's a cool little, it just has this feeling that it gives you when you use slide to unlock that no phone ever had before. It was engaging. It was tactile. It was cool. It was brilliant. And that's why Google had to copy it, because Google could have put a green button and red button on every one of their Android phones, but they chose not to. And slide to unlock was so good that they chose to infringe instead of doing it the other way.
So, Russ, I think my next question is really for the average angel out there. Clearly, you guys are deep into this, and your whole job is to tear up patents and what is this worth, and you guys have very thoughtful, in-depth frameworks. So if somebody wants the best, they should call you. For the average angel, considering an investment where there is some, let's call it a thoughtful IP portfolio, which includes patents, what are some of the frameworks and maybe a few of the specific questions you would encourage an angel to spend their few hours of diligence time poking on?
I would spend more time looking at the business and do the economics work out? Are we capturing real value? Is there a customer out there that wants to pay what it costs for us to deliver that solution? Is that solution real? Are the right people doing the right things at the right time for this company? Patents are they're not a cure-all. They don't mask over any of that. If something's missing in the business plan, the patents aren't going to solve that problem. In all likelihood, if the company, or not if, when the company fails and it's liquidated, will those patents have any value? And the answer is no, unless they're infringed. If they're infringed, the patents may have some value, but that value is not going to mature until typically 12, 15 years after the patent's filed. That's when patents tend to have their maximum value, because it takes that long for infringement to come around. It takes that long for the market to adopt the idea. In the short term, for the angel investor, it's far more important that the company start making some money and can start to sustain itself. If it can't, then the patents might be interesting.
Russ, let me make sure I heard what you just said right. What I just heard you say is a patent is typically a 10 to 15 year investment, meaning that I'm going to invest material dollars, time, energy, attention to protect and create some exclusionary power around this technology today for a potential payout in average 10 to 15 years from now, if I'm able to successfully litigate.
Well, or license it, whatever. Every patent needs to be able to be litigated. Now, a lot of people, justifiably so, like, that sounds really expensive. It's really hard. It's really painful. Yes, it is. Okay. And that's why you have to buy insurance. And you're 10 times more likely to have a patent related lawsuit than a director's and officer's claim on your insurance. 10 times more likely to have patent related lawsuits. Do startup companies go out and get patent insurance? No. But do the angel investors who sit on the board say you have to get D&O insurance? Absolutely. And patent enforcement insurance, patent defense insurance is commercially available. It can be as cheap as $200, $500, $1,000 a month, depending on how much coverage you get. So it's not like
$200,000 to $500,000 a month. You say it's not bad at all.
I mean, $200, $500, or $1,000 a month. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. It's reasonably affordable.
So it sounds like, I mean, what's the point of having a patent if I'm not going to have insurance around it? Because the only way you actually generate value from that patent is to either license it or pursue infringement, which is going to get expensive.
Right. And then, when it comes to infringement, a lot of people think, well, my patent attorney will do it on contingency. There are plenty of people that will do contingency litigation. First off, you should never, never, never have the person or the firm who wrote the patent to be involved in litigation. You need a separate litigator or licensing professional or attorney who has no connection to that original firm. Because I'll tell you, I've written plenty of patent applications, and you always kind of know where the skeletons are buried or where you wish you'd done a little better. But it's really hard to tell your client, hey, I got this patent, but it's really weak in this area. Nobody can do that trustfully. You have to get somebody who's separate. So completely different law firm. But as far as contingency fee, the cost for litigation is so high right now in the US that contingency fee litigation is only interesting if they can recover $50 million. So that means the licensing revenue that I could recover from an infringer needs to be $50 million. A typical licensing rate might be 25% of profit. So you kind of do the math that, they got to be profit 40 million. This is $100 million product at an even bigger company. So we do not go out, contingency fee people just can't afford to go sue your competitors making $5 million and eating your lunch in the marketplace. They just can't. Nobody cares. On an insurance plan, I can, but a contingency fee, you can't. And the likelihood that the patent owner ever winds up with a dime on contingency fee litigation is pretty close to zero. It's, there's lit finance that comes in, they get 3x return. The waterfall capital stack on litigation is brutal. And they have zero interest in settling for more than what they're going to get paid anyway. So they're not going to fight for one extra dime that goes to the patent owner because they don't have an incentive to do that.
Charlie Munger's wisdom strikes again. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome.
Yep.
Okay, so Russ, my last question. What are some practicals? So our audience, if somebody's made it to this point in the podcast, I think they should check out your book, your content all over the place publicly, great content. For actually evaluating a patent, doing a little bit of high-level research on what an entrepreneur is putting in front of me in a data room, what are some of your favorite resources and practical places to point people?
I'm a big fan of the idea that the best is yet to come when it comes to patents, right? I kind of coined this term, a data-driven patent. And at the beginning of a startup's journey, we don't have data, right? The only data that really matters is what's the customer paying us? And if they're not paying us yet, we're guessing. And so from an angel investor's standpoint, and there's certain exceptions, medical device, pharma, the patents may be far more valuable, may be far more important as the company matures, as opposed to a company that is likely to be shifting the product over time. If the company has product that's going to roll out And then based on feedback from the customer, we we may spin it this way, we may do that way, we might bring out a whole bunch of other products. Make sure that the company can get to product number 2, right? Don't spend all the money on IP protection if 10 years from now, that product is a small percentage of the overall. For med device, where that product is the only product, and once it makes it through all the FDA hurdles, it's in production, patents, gotta have them and get them if possible, have them, it would be nice to have them evaluated by a third party, a disinterested third party. It's not always possible. And a lot of patent attorneys are part of angel groups, and based on their pure qualifications as patent attorneys, they'll opine on whether or not the patents are good or bad. I don't happen to like that, but I think there's problems with that. But still, make sure you get a company. Make sure the company works. Make sure the company can actually figure out who the customer is. And what's their cost to acquire a customer? What's their lifetime value? You get those things figured out, you got a business. And then, maybe you'll look back and say, I kind of wish I had a patent. Okay, on the next product, do one. But if you plow all your money into filling up your patent attorney's corporate jet, you're not going to have any money to get there. I think a lot of my patent attorney friends might not like me for that advice, but you got to invest in the business first. That was not very helpful, I don't think.
I love it. Well, Russ, I think one of my takeaways from this conversation is the importance of having a business that is enduring, that is creating value, that is actually addressing a customer pain point, and that patents and everything connected to them are of secondary importance to actually delivering a good product and service. Because if the company falls apart in a couple of years, there's no value in having those patents anyway, which would in theory only create value in 10, 15 years.
Right. And those patents will get traded. Somebody might pick them up and for a song, right? Maybe I'll get $50,000 out of that patent. The cost that, what we invested in it, maybe we can sell them and get 50 grand back, but we're not going to sell those patents and get $50 million back. It's not a backstop to a bankruptcy.
Yeah, I love it. Well, this has been super helpful, Russ. We will wrap there. Thank you so much for joining today, and I look forward to talking again soon.
Thanks for having me. See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Diligent Observer. I'm your host, Andrew Taslow, and if you are looking to make better bets as an angel investor, subscribe for more at thediligentobserver.com.